Today, we're connecting Slack to n8n, and we don't do it the amateur way. We do it the only right way in 2025 using their dedicated Agents and AI Apps mode. This mode allows to build fully functional conversational AI applications that feel almost like talking to ChatGPT because they allow users to have multiple threads that are fully context aware. But in order to utilize this mode, the setup of the credential is a bit different than what you may already know. So let's get started. We're going to start this one completely from scratch by visiting Slack. I'm just heading to slack.com, links in the description, and I can choose to get started. The free account will be sufficient to build your own app and get your own workspace, so there's no need to worry about this. I'm going to choose to sign in with Google and create a workspace. I'm going to untick this box, go next. I will not be spending time uploading my profile photo. I don't have anyone to invite. Sad. And now I will start with the limited free version, completely sufficient to build your apps, to have your workspace and just practice. That is my brand new workspace. It's opened in my browser, but you can also download it to your desktop. And if you head to the left, you're gonna see a Slack bot that sent us a message. And right now we're gonna create an app that's gonna look exactly like Slackbot, and it will be accessible from the panel on the left-hand side. In order to create my own app, I need to go to api.slack.com/apps, the link is in the description, and click Create an App. I'm going to create an app from scratch. This setup is a bit different from setting up your usual API credentials, because whatever you connect to n8n, usually you just go there, you generate an API key, or you just go through the consent screen if you're establishing an OAuth connection. But Slack actually forces you to create an app. This app is internal. This is where you define all the scopes and where you're also able to generate the secrets that you're later using to authenticate requests. So I'm going to call this app Penelope, because I don't see why not. And I'm gonna install it in the Code Cuts workspace that we've just created. As you can see, we have quite a bit of tabs in here, like a lot of them, and also a lot of information in the UI. As mentioned before, we're gonna be using the dedicated Agents and AI Apps mode that Slack has released in 2024. So let's turn this toggle on. Here is where I can provide a short description of what the app can and can't do, and it will be visible after you install it in your workspace. That's cosmetics, so I'm not going to focus on this. This is not required to establish a connection that we're focusing on in this video, so I'm going to skip anything that's non-essential. And our next step is going to OAuth and permissions. We're going to scroll down to scopes. And we already have one scope in here. It's assistant write. This scope gets added automatically whenever we turn on the agent or assistant mode. But there are a few more we need to add. And I need you to focus here, because scopes are usually this part of setup where everyone is like, oh, it's so boring and unnecessary. First of all, it is very much necessary. Second of all, you should treat it very seriously. If you're just playing around, maybe it's not that important. But if you build something for a client, or for a company you work at, this is probably the most important part. There's a simple rule you should follow, and it's called principle of least privilege. So anytime you need to build something specific, you should only give the minimal required permissions to satisfy this use case. What does it mean in context of our Slack setup? We need to be able to use the assistant mode. Then our assistant needs to know what's going on. So it needs to have access to history of messages. And by the way, I've spent quite some time testing different sets of permissions. So what I'm giving you here is the absolute minimum. That's going to save you a lot of time. So if you want to express a bit of appreciation, you can do it by either tapping the subscribe button or the thumbs up button, or both of them. Thank you in advance. Moving forward, the assistant needs to know what's going on, so it has to have the access to history. It also needs to be able to respond to the messages we're sending. Therefore, it needs the chat write permission. And then we have the last permission I recommend adding in here, and this permission is called users read. Let's quickly jump to n8n tab so I can show you why I'm adding the last permission. After we add the Slack trigger node on new message posted to channel, we're going to see a few drop downs, but there's actually one more setting that's going to be very important for our use case. And this field is called usernames or IDs to ignore. And this drop down should contain the list of users of our Slack workspace. That's why we're giving the app this permission so n8n can list all the users, but I'm going to focus on this in a bit. Back to Slack. After our scopes are set up, there's one more thing we need to do in App Home. We need to scroll down to Show Tabs, and we need to allow users to send /commands. This is not applicable for our use case. We will not be using /commands. And messages from the chat tab. So the second part, sending messages from the chat app, is necessary to utilize the agent or assistant mode in Slack. One more thing, we scroll up, go to install app, we install it to our workspace. This is the consent screen. This is a nice summary of all the permissions we're giving. And by the way, you may not be able to go through this process all by yourself if you're building for a client or you're building it within a company you work for. Because there's a high chance Slack will be managed by the internal IT team, and they will have to do at least some of the steps for you. So if you want to help them save some time, you can just share this video, because figuring out all the scopes and all the different tabs and all the way to set things up in Slack can be more time consuming than you can imagine. In the end, let's click allow. And now we got the only string of text we're looking for. It's the bot user OAuth token. We need to copy this one. And then in n8n, we just go to create new credential and paste it in the access token field. We click save, connection tested successfully. And now a few adjustments. In order to use the agent assistant mode in Slack, we can turn on this toggle. It's not entirely applicable for this setup, but there's one more very important thing that we need to do in the usernames or IDs to ignore. Because spoiler alert, in a bit, we're going to be setting up events that we're going to be subscribing to and that are then going to be posted to this trigger node in n8n. And we're going to subscribe to each new message that's sent to our assistant. And here's the risk. Because if we don't exclude our own bot user, so Penelope, we run into the risk of entering an infinite loop where we send a message to Penelope, Penelope posts the message back to us, and this is the event we're subscribed to because we're subscribed to new messages, and we will not be able to differentiate between like bot messages and user messages. And we may enter into this infinite loop where we just send messages to each other. The worst part is that your n8n plan will be consumed like within minutes. No matter how many credits you have after you enter the infinite loop, all the credits will be gone in a matter of minutes. So be very careful when setting this up. I can tell you that this risk is extremely simple to mitigate because all you need to do is select Penelope from the list. That's it. Nothing else. You're good. Just gonna rename this one, save it, and I'm actually gonna activate this workflow. So I'm gonna turn this toggle on, and our webhook is now listening for events. But we haven't configured any events in the Slack admin panel, so this is what we're gonna do right now. Let's go to the event subscriptions tab, and first of all, enable the events. Now, we need the request URL. So this is the endpoint URL where the events will be posted. In our case, this is the production webhook URL, and it's the production one because we've already turned this workflow to active state. Now I'm going to paste this URL in here, and it's going to be automatically verified by Slack. Slack just very quickly posted a test event, and it received a response from our webhook. Once this is done, we have some bot events to subscribe to. And at the moment, there's only one event that we want, and it's direct message. So the event name is message.im. Now we can save changes. And it's the time for a little bit of testing. I've opened my brand new Slack workspace in my browser. Slackbot informed us that I have installed Penelope. Now let's check if Penelope is present. So let's go to the search bar and we see Penelope in here. Now we've added this app in the apps section on the left. We're gonna send a test message. We don't expect a response because at the moment we're just listening for the event, but there's nothing in our workflow that would actually generate a response. So I'm gonna say, hey. And now I can go to my executions tab and see that I received not one, but 2 events. So let's see what are the differences between them. The first event we've received has the subtype assistant app thread. The second event we received immediately after this one is the actual message. So it only has type. It doesn't have a subtype. This is a normal behavior that Slack also explains in their documentation, but we need to implement some custom logic on our side to not duplicate response to the first message. And I've shown you the differences between these 2 events for a reason. Right now, I'm going to open the first execution where the subtype was assistant app thread. I'm going to copy this to editor. Now it copied all the data we've received, and it allows us to add an if node and check whether message subtype is not equal to assistant app thread. When we execute this step, we see this execution would usually follow the false branch here, highlighted in green. And these are the events that we need to ignore. So I'm going to add a no operation do nothing node. I'm going to rename it to ignore. For clarity, I'm also going to rename this one, this message subtype assistant app thread, rename, and add another Slack node that's going to send a response to Penelope, send a message. We actually send this message to channel, not a user. But in order to set this up, it would be better to work with the other event we've received. So I'm going to go back to executions. I'm going to select the second event. I'm just going to open this node, go to JSON, copy, go back to editor, edit pinned data, save. Right now, when I execute this node, it should follow the true path. This is correct. So everything works as expected. And now I'm able to map the channel by ID. You can find the channel in here. The message text, for now, it will be a simple hello, but you can build whatever in here. You can add some additional nodes. You can add an agent node. You can add call to LLM. So these messages can be generated dynamically. It's just that we're testing the connection. And now 2 additional settings. First one, include link to workflow. As of default, it's turned on. If you don't turn it off, all your messages will have this string appended that say, this message was sent with this n8n workflow. You don't need that. That's why I'm turning it off. But again, it's just cosmetics. And the more important option is reply to a message. So what we're setting right now is the way for Penelope to respond in a certain thread, instead of starting a new one or sending a direct message in any other way. So we need to click reply to a message. And here we need to map the thread timestamp. This is basically an identifier of the thread we've just created that's associated with the event we've received. Let's go back to the editor. Let's save our updated workflow, switch to executions tab. Now go to Slack. And here I'm going to show you another cool thing about this agent and assistant mode, because here you can start a new chat and it creates a separate thread. This time we have the updated workflow, so we should receive hello as a response. I'm sending my greeting to Penelope, and Penelope responded with hello. So everything works as expected. If we go to history, we can actually see our previous thread and also our current thread. And actually, we can go back to these threads anytime we want, continue the conversation. So if we're dealing with different scenarios and these conversations have different context, this is going to be perfectly separated. And that's why this mode is just fantastic. Now, after I go back to n8n, I can see two new executions. So the first one is the one we've ignored, and the second one is actually us responding to the message. So right now, you know how to configure Slack apps so they look professional and they come with these cool conversational AI capabilities. That's a much better approach than constantly using bot mentions. App mentions are not designed very well for retaining the context, so these are usually used for one-off question receiving a response, while in here, you can have an actual conversation and configure your workflow in a way so the context is retained and all the follow-up messages are responded to based on the context of the previous ones. This is the real business use case, and we deal with use cases like that in my community. So in case you're interested in learning more, it's definitely a good place to be. It also has a lot of free resources like guides on how to connect tools to n8n, for example, like this one, that will save you a lot of time. So join me there and stay in touch. In the meantime, if anything remains unclear from this video, feel free to drop the comment so I'm able to answer it, and all the other viewers that may have the same question that's right now in your head already can see the answer. Congrats on learning new stuff, and I'll see you soon. Take care.